Author Stephen King once said, "Books are a uniquely portable magic." Through a few words on a page, you are taken to far-off places and meet a host of interesting characters. In Chesterton, Doug Wilson of O'Gara and Wilson Booksellers keeps an eclectic stock of everything from fiction and fantasy to history and hobbies. As you cross the threshold of the shop, you can feel the tradition and history that is kept within its walls and between the pages.
As a reader, I think what I most love about books is how it can transport you. We have many senses, we have our senses, and I think we're best when we can be using all of them full guns. With a book, that can happen. When you read a book, a whole world is created in your mind. I have been a bookseller for 45 years. I started in 1972. The bookstore was established in 1882. There was a Mr. Donahue in the 1890s who was a bookseller of Chicago. He took on an apprentice in the 1920s by the name of Jerry Nedwick. Jerry Nedwick came to the point where he took on an apprentice in 1936, Joseph O'Gara, and then in 72, Joseph O'Gara took on me as an apprentice. After 5 years, it became not Joseph O'Gara Bookseller, but O'Gara and Wilson Booksellers. We'd been established in the University of Chicago community. Mr. O'Gara had come there sometime in the 60s and moved to a couple different locations. We moved here 3.5 years ago, and we've never regretted it. We've been embraced by the community. It's been a very good 3 years, and we hope to continue for the foreseeable future. I remember when I first was looking at old books, I went out with a college mate of mine who was actually a bookseller in his spare time. In and amongst his stock was a book printed in about 1910, and I'd never seen a book that looked anything like it. It was cloth covers, but imprinted upon the cloth covers was a design of a Japanese woman and some beautiful cherry blossoms on the side. And I said, "What is this?" And he says, "Oh, that's an older book. That's an antique book." And that sort of got me started. Typically, I think when you talk about antiques, it used to be if something is 100 years old, it begins to be thought of as an antique. And it's out of phase with the way things are done today enough at that point to where it does stand out and it can be seen as something other. In the back, we have cases where we put older books that are bound in leather or vellum, which is another type of leather. And some of them date back to the 1520s, 1530s. A lot of our books are from the 18th century, which would be the 1700s. I think a few months ago we had a book that was printed in Paris in 1507, and that was probably our oldest book. They look very, very different, and very often the typefaces are very difficult for modern readers to read, even if the book is in English. Some people, it takes a while to get comfortable with them when you're handling and reading them. More in the past than today, books have had a lot of art applied to them. Most people are familiar with modern books and the dust jacket art. But even before then, the design, the layout, sometimes the older books have designs impressed into the cloth. There's a lot of art that's put into books. I have learned over the years certain methods to clean them, to restore them, to repair them. And this actually gives me an outlet for my sort of need to make things better and to craft things. And I do quite a bit of restoration of books. Books come in here and they usually don't go back out into the world. If they need some improvement and some cleaning and some restoration, I will do that before we put them up for sale. Well, I have been told that by some that books are over and that they are a dying art. I don't agree with that. I believe that they will always have a certain place in people's lives. There are fewer used bookstores, fewer new bookstores than there used to be 15, 20 years ago. But those people will go out of their way to find those of us that still exist. As I say, the future in the used book trade, I think, there will be bookstores, fewer bookstores, but I think there'll always be a place for them. It's hard to get young people, however, to think of a used bookstore as a rising business, something they want to hitch their wagon to. The hope is that there'll be enough to do, and there won't be that break in the culture which would break that connection to the past. I think that unbroken tradition is very important, and I hope that there'll be enough people that think of it as something they'd like to do with their lives. A used bookstore, or a new bookstore for that matter, is a smorgasbord of unimagined delights. You're going to find things that you couldn't have even conceived might exist. That's one of the last things we can do that the internet can't do, is we can present you with things that you didn't even know existed, and that you can just sort of go from one to another discovering and exploring. And we want to have some book for anybody who might come in. And we do the best we can at achieving that.